people who were the reasons for certain rules. What's your story? Story 1. When I was going into 6th grade, my family was moving to a new town. In order to prevent myself and my brother from having to go through the hassle of moving and to alleviate some of their stress, my parents decided to send us to a sleepaway camp for 6 weeks. My brother, 2 years older, proceeded to get extremely sick within the first week or so that we were at camp. He was on bed rest, and at more than one point the staff had to bring him into the small town nearby to go to the hospital. My mother had a tendency to overreact and make mountains out of molehills. She was extremely unhappy with the staff and thought it was outrageous that my brother got that sick that quickly, assuming that someone must have showed up to camp on the first day knowing they were sick and spread the germ to my brother. Luckily, he recovered after the first week and was able to enjoy the rest of the summer. When the term was over, we left camp, excited to see our new house and meet the people at our new school. Fast forward to the next summer. Our parents saw how much we enjoyed camp and decided that having us out of the house for a month wasn't so bad for themselves either. Instead of driving us this summer, they decided to send us on the buses the camp ran to different counties and states. The total ride was about 4 hours, an eternity for a middle schooler with a surplus of energy. Once we arrived at camp, the buses all lined up, and there's an in-processing tent set up where all the kids had to walk through before they could get their bags and go to their cabins. It was taking forever. I started to get irritated. I had waited all year for this, and now I have to wait more? I finally get off the bus and into the tent and see what they're doing. Each camper is getting asked a series of questions about their current health. Are they feeling sick? Do they have any allergies? Do they have any prescriptions, etc.? They would then get their temperature taken by the nurse to confirm they do not have a fever and were sent with a counselor to their cabin. I get to the end of the line and ask the nurse why they're doing all of this, because it's taking so long, and I was being an impatient child. Her response? A parent was very upset last summer that their camper got sick, so now we're screening everyone and quarantining them if they show any signs or symptoms of being ill. I looked at my brother, who was standing behind me, and yelled, "Thanks a lot!" Too long didn't read. Overbearing mother caused camp to establish screening process to make sure kids weren't sick. Sounds like a camp I went to in Texas. Sounds like camps kind of created their own TSA. I don't think it's the fault of the brother. I know it was a cheap shot to say thanks a lot to the brother. I would have probably gone for the punchline there too, but I think it was more the mother. They cited her as being kind of overbearing. If she hadn't made a big thing about it, they probably wouldn't have gone through that. Story 2. My freshman year out of college, I made it so that no one in not just my dorm, but all dorms on campus was allowed to use the microwave located in each of the dorm's common areas after 10 p.m. because drunk old me went to microwave a Hot Pocket one night, and instead of setting the timer to 3 minutes, I set it to 30 minutes, which wouldn't have been a problem if I'd stayed there waiting for it, but drunk old me decided at that moment, hey, you know what would be even better than being drunk? Being drunk and high. And proceeded to go back to my room for a bong hit, which turned into several, which turned me into nearly passing out, roused only by the now blaring fire alarm that made everyone else in the dorm to also have to go outside in the middle of the night. Of course, due to the whole where there's smoke, there's fire rule, a couple of fire trucks showed up to the action. Me and everyone else that lived in this dorm were all standing outside grumbling about what butthole caused this. Some speculating that someone was stupid enough to have pulled a false alarm. At a certain point amongst that grumbling, did it dawn on me that I just left that Hot Pocket in the microwave, and that's when I started worrying that the source of all this 3 a.m. hubbub could have been me. A deep, abiding shame that was validated when I saw one of the firefighters emerge from the dorm with a charred microwave. I joined in the chorus of incredulousness from the other cohabitants of my dorm who were shouting, "Please, what drunken, dumb person burned up the microwave, and whoever did this is gonna get their butt beat," and similar witticisms. I figured at this point, lying was my only way out. And in the end, it worked. No one that night ever found out it was me who burned up the microwave in my drunken and stoned state of dishevelment, and was the source of the no microwaves after 10 rule in the dorms that was enforced for the rest of the time I was at school, and could still be in place for all I know. You son of a shrew! It was you. Anybody ever see the Terry Gilliam film Time Bandits, where the fireman brought out the roast at the end? Don't touch it! It's pure evil! Story 3. During my junior year, my physics teacher did the mousetrap car assignment and held a competition to see who can make a mousetrap car go the farthest and the fastest. I spent the whole night before making it. The next day, I did a test run right before the testing, and my rear axle snapped in half, basically ensuring that my mousetrap car was not going to move. Anyway, the teacher assigned 50 points for having your mousetrap car there, and 50 points if it moved. He gave each student at least 3 attempts to get his mousetrap car to move. Everyone in my class got theirs to move, and I knew mine was basically fracked. We were doing these runs in the hallway, and I was so glad that no one came out to see how mine would do. When it came to my turn, I set up my mousetrap and let it go. The car was barely moving, and I was losing my cool due to how fracked I thought it was. My teacher had to come closer, get on his knees, and see that the car is actually slowly moving. Confused students came out due to my celebration and howling, only to see the mousetrap car at my knees. I got full credit for the assignment. The physics teacher did the assignment again my senior year, and I saw that he changed it so that your mousetrap car had to go at least 1 foot to get those points. Maybe there were other students that were the reason for it, but as far as I know, the teacher had me in mind. Hey, I think some of those contests, it's like a lot of contests that corporations hold for prizes and stuff. They made up the rules, and it's our job to figure out how to obey those rules to the letter to get the most out of what we want. I think this just taught the physics teacher a lesson on how to set rules. I'm glad he got the full points. Story 4. Back in the day on Neopets, there was this rule that you couldn't make posts titled things like "Girls Only Party," but the rule was never enforced. So one day when I was 12, and on my mother's Neopets account, since I was too young to use the Neo boards, I made one of those boards, and everything was fine for the first 10 to 15 pages. Everyone was staying within the rules on the rule-breaking post, so TNT, the Neopets team, basically the mods and developers and stuff, left us alone. And then, someone decides to roleplay going swimming, which was kind of risky, and I warned against it. Shortly thereafter, someone made a post that was pretty similar to the following. "Oh, okay." Gets out of water. Bikini falls off. Oops! The board was instantly deleted, and my mother's account was permanently frozen, and from that day forward, when someone used the word bikini on the Neo boards, a filter changed the word to cardigan. Gotta love those filters. I never played, but a friend who played Phantasy Star Online shared that if you wanted to say basement, you had to put a dot in the middle of the part of the word that spelled semen, or it would get bounced back. Brilliant. Story 5. So in my high school, there's a rule that was added my junior year and is even in bold in the student parent handbook. The rule was that students are not allowed off campus during the 10-minute passing period at all. The reason that rule exists is that my sophomore year, I was really craving a Starbucks during my first period. So in the last few minutes of the period, I ordered a coffee, and then during break ran half a mile to pick up my coffee and walk back. I made it back to my class on time, but the school still tried to get me in trouble until I said, "Show me where it says I can't leave campus during the passing period in the handbook, and I will accept any punishment." Otherwise, you have no grounds to punish me. And after 20 minutes of sitting in the office, I got out with no punishment. Then my junior year, that rule was added to the handbook. To this day, it's one of my worst accomplishments. It is so shocking how little freedom American students are given, now that I've been in Germany for a few years. There's no utility to that kind of micromanagement at all. Story 6. In my 3rd grade, I jumped off a very tall piece of playground equipment, smacked my chin on my knee, and bit my tongue. It was a bloodbath, and the teacher passed out and hit her head off of the pavement, resulting in another bloodbath. Welp, the next morning, there was an announcement stating no more jumping off the tower on the playground. The next day, the teacher's son tried jumping off of a rope swing over the schoolyard fence and broke both of his arms. The school removed all of the fun stuff off of the playground that summer. My elementary school's playground consisted of a blacktop, a slide, and a tire swing, and we were almost never allowed to use the tire swing because it was always muddy underneath it. I feel your pain. A couple years after I aged out, they got real playground equipment, and a few years after that, they built an entirely new school because of all the asbestos in the old one. I was a little salty. I completely understand the equipment getting changed up. When I went to school, that stuff was made out of painted steel and metal, and the slides were really hot on really warm days, so you better not be wearing shorts when sliding down, or you're gonna have red legs for the rest of the day in class. Story 7. My 4th high school now has a rule that teachers have to actually check in with the office before allowing a student into your class, even if you know them. My mom gave up on me going to high school because she didn't graduate, and neither did my grandma. No one on my dad's side graduated either. Pulled me out of school. I moved across the state and started going to my old school again, and the teachers didn't check in on if I was supposed to be there. I still hated going to classes, but needed the testing so I could get credits. So I would ask my friends who had the same classes to tell me where there were tests, and would sit in the cafeteria for both lunch sections. It took them a few months to figure it out. Story 8. In 5th grade, we had to do a book report at the end of the spring semester for my English class on a book of our own choice. Part of the book report was that you had to dress up as the main character of the book and retell the story in their words in front of the class. It was a fun, whimsical kind of assignment that everybody enjoyed. Of course, baby me was on a nonfiction book kick and decided to pick a Holocaust memoir. So I dressed up as an actual Holocaust survivor, with an old suitcase and a dented tin pot and everything, and stood in front of the class playing a young Polish Jew who watched his best friend get ripped apart by dogs in Auschwitz-Birkenau. I distinctly remember my teacher staring at me with complete horror while I did my book report. It's been about 13 years since that incident, and my old English teacher still teaches 5th grade English and still does the book report assignment. For the last 13 years, according to my 6th grade homeroom teacher, with whom I'm still in touch, she hasn't allowed anybody to do nonfiction books. The mental image is cracking me up. Story 9. Oh, I'm the reason for several safety rules at a local warehouse. We switched from heavy grease-covered kingpin locks for trailers after I dropped one of the kingpin locks on my head. Rain boots are required when dealing with trailers after I developed trench foot after working in the rain for 4 days straight in waterlogged shoes. Nothing heavier than 50 pounds on the conveyor belt after I hurt my back trying to lift an 80-pound box off of a line 20 feet up. Everyone in the shipping department rotates through the fastest line after me and someone who was under got into a verbal fight over it. No one straight out said it, but I'm fairly certain the attendance policy got changed 3 times because of me. You must have been a cash cow for a workman's comp attorney. This reminds me of those really graphic work safety films that are low budget that you sometimes see, that are just really melodramatic, although there's no blood loss or anything like that. It's just this guy being the dunderhead and just demonstrating all the stuff that could get you workman's comp or really just get you suspended for being an idiot, basically. Story 10. Our gym where we had prep rallies was a level lower than most of the school, so there was an elevator so disabled people could get there. A few of my buddies and I would take the elevator back up with one of my best friends who was in a wheelchair because we would sit with him during the rallies and walk back to class with him and chat in the elevator. One day, an assistant principal saw us get out with him and lost his mind because he thought we were using the elevator being lazy. They put a sign up next week saying to leave the elevator for people who needed it. My buddy was in the wheelchair and his dad sent several angry emails about it because it essentially segregated him from his friends. They took the sign down pretty soon after that. Story 11. Don't know if this counts, but a guy in my school was the reason for the boys' bathrooms being locked in between breaks because they poured washing powder/detergent down the toilets, then flushing, causing a foam party. If anyone needed the bathroom, we had to go to the office and fill out a form, then get the key. It lasted about 2 weeks until the teachers and most of the senior students kicked up a fit because it was taking about 10 minutes out of your class time if you needed to go rather than the 2 minutes it used to take. Plus, the girls' bathroom was still open, so it became an equality issue, and they got unlocked again. Ugh. Bathroom keys attached to a wooden germ-infested stick. No thank you. Wondering how many people who don't wash their hands have touched it. Ugh. Story 12. I got Beyblades banned in 4th grade. Circa like 2002. My mom had cheated out and bought me an off-brand Beyblade that was heavier and I think made out of metal or something dense. Anyways, we had this one kid who would bring in like the Battle Dome or whatever they had. My Beyblade would collide with theirs, and theirs would just go flying out of the dome at unsuspecting victims. My dollar store had these too. Not at all modular. They were little more than a molded plastic design inserted into a cast metal Beyblade. Story 13. 9th grade geography class. Our cool teacher let us bring in CDs to listen to in our downtime. I brought in a burn mix CD that, unbeknownst to me, friend made it, had an unidentified version of Afro Man's Because I Got High on it. Cue to the lyric, I was gonna eat your meow. And the teacher is diving over his desk to turn the CD player off. It was a huge laugh, but a new rule of only pre-approved music was instated. It's the only school legacy I had. I say had because the cool teacher ended up being a child violator and went to jail for using the faces of female students in child corn. That took a quick turn at the end.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 14. No selling things out of your locker. Ran quite the business back in junior high. Pens, pencils, sticky notes, Pokemon cards, random toys like Beyblade pats, special milk straws that had the flavor in the straws so whatever you were drinking changed flavor, and a few other random things I'd find or people would trade me for things instead of using money. Made maybe around $300. I wish they had just let me do what I was doing. My work was honest. After I got shut down, all the kids selling things went underground. Now, instead of instant chocolate milk straws, the kids were buying weed from the quiet kid in the bathroom. Magic milk straws are the best. Story 15. At my school, it was a rule to not act like a ninja. When I was young, I got interested in Naruto, so I started acting like a ninja. 3 people saw me and started to act like a ninja as well. The teacher noticed, so she told us to stop. We stopped for the day, but the next day we did it again. Our teacher was getting annoyed, so she gave us a bad star. A red star that meant you were bad. At the end of the week, you had to take the bad stars home for your parents to see. We got mad at the teacher, so when she wasn't looking, one of the ninjas stood up and walked slowly. He plopped the red stars from each of the ninja star sheets. Teacher noticed and had enough. She sent us to the principal's office. He was laughing, but told us to stop. Next day, there was a rule. Don't act like ninjas. What a sad anti-immigration teacher. Story 16. As soon as I learned to walk, I figured out that running was great fun. What was even more fun was to run right off the edge of the pool into the water. Whoever was watching me would have to jump in after me and begin a whole cycle. As such, my parents quickly installed a fence around the pool, with the rule that no one was allowed to open the pool gate without a grown-up present. In areas other than the house, I had to wear a backpack leash to keep me from running off to who knows where to look at something interesting. I never did grow out of that habit. Story 17. My high school had a policy that any student who passed an AP exam with a score of 3 or above would receive an automatic A in the corresponding class. I failed AP Government. I never did my homework and got a 4 or 5 on the exam. They changed the policy the next year. I was in debate with a guy who did this for all of his AP classes. Super smart, but holy hell, he was lazy. Story 18. Here's my flex. When I was a kid, I got so good at a couple of arcade games that I could play sometimes for a couple of hours in 1 quarter, or 2 or 3, depending on the game. A lot of, or most times, no one noticed, and it never mattered. Well, our local comic book store put up a sign limiting each player to 30 minutes at a time because of me. They had like 2 machines, and sometimes I'd hog them thinking I was cool. I'm sure I was the annoying little nerd kid in retrospect. Story 19. I got lunch trays banned from my school cafeteria. Last day of 12th grade, there were no teachers supervising the lunchroom. We had those hard sort of plastic trays, so me and a friend decided to play baseball with a cheeseburger. I hit it with the tray right as the principal walked in. The cheeseburger literally exploded on him. I got off scot-free due to the fact it was the last day and the school really didn't care enough to punish me or my friend. The next year, my other friend who was a grade below me showed me the new trays in the cafeteria. They were styrofoam. The earth is weeping. Story 20. My primary school had to ban human pyramids because we would get like 12 or 16 people involved, and we weren't very good at making pyramids, so our uniforms would constantly be covered in mud from us falling onto the grass. Plus, they were afraid we would crush each other. Our school had a group of kids try a human pyramid only once during the time I was there. Nobody was brave enough to try it again after the pyramid fell and one kid broke his arm. Story 21. When I was a freshman in college, I brewed beer in my dorm room. I got caught and written up, but it was before I added the yeast. So my defense was that I did not have alcohol in the dorm and was just landing to bring the mixture to a 21-year-old friend off campus prior to adding the yeast. It was a private university and they called hogwash, but the penalty was just a slap on the wrist, and they changed the residency code to specifically prohibit fermenting yeast. Story 22. When I was younger, 3 or 4, my school had a large field near the entrance where we'd walk across to get to class from our drop-off room. I decided it would be funny to try and run away. My brother did the same thing a year later in the same year, and that's when they introduced a fun-colored rope everyone had to hold on to when going to and from class. I don't know what school you went to, but my kid's school has that rule and a large field, too. Story 23. I wasn't the reason for the rule, but I was the one who implemented it. I was the network admin at a middle school, back when mice with balls were still a thing. Some of the kids were regularly stealing the balls out of the mice and taking them with them, so we'd have to replace the mice out of our meager spares. Because of that, I implemented the policy that all mice were to be turned upside down at the end of class, and the teacher was to walk around and visually inspect each mouse to ensure the ball was still in place. Ended the problem right there. Story 24. When I worked at Whole Foods in the prepared food section, I used to make myself a burrito for dinner. I would load that sucker as full with all the beans, rice, and meat as possible. I usually ended up with something that was about the size of a fat baby's arm. Yeah, that all came to a stop when one of the store managers saw me making my own burrito. After that, we would get written up if they caught us making our own food like burritos and whatnot. Story 25. I'm the reason my middle school had to add a no outside food to be delivered during school hours rule in the handbook. For my 12th birthday, My mom brought me and 10 other kids to McDonald's during our lunch period. I guess it caused some jealousy because someone told the principal. Technically, we didn't do anything wrong, but the next year, the rule was in the book. That's some hogwash. I remember in middle school, there were kids who would have pizza delivery guys deliver to the open lunch area. No administrator cared. Story 26. I figured out a loophole in the Google Chrome at my school that if you go into Bing instead of Google, none of the restrictions applied. Me being the hormonal teenager I am, you can imagine what happened next. Yeah, you can't go to Bing anymore. But Internet Explorer still works. Story 27. At school, there's now a rule that nothing can be mass printed, even though we have a set amount of printing credit, because I blocked up the printer while printing tiled Fat Yoshi and Fat Skipper. Priorities. Story 28. Not me, but I was there. My friend did a flip off this little roof in a playground and broke his wrist. All roofs were immediately sawed off. Within the week. Like immediately. Leaving safe, sharp edges instead. Story 29. My high school was fairly small, and for graduation, they sent an email saying each kid could bring as many guests as they wanted without tickets. I invited practically everyone I could to come, and the sound in the relatively empty small auditorium from about 30 people was pretty deafening. The next year, they implemented a paid ticket system. Story 30. I moved from the Midwest to Texas to attend college. It was the first time I tasted deep-fried okra. The cafeteria was all you could eat. The okra was like hard rock to me, and I ate plateful after plateful. Pretty soon, the rule was 2 servings per meal. Fried okra is indeed like hard rock. I've been eating it my whole life and still devour the stuff. Story 31. While working at McDonald's when I was younger, I thought it would be cool to make a quesadilla with what was in the kitchen. It turned out really well, but my manager ratted to the GM, and the next day there was a sign in the kitchen stating that only items on the menu were to be made by cooks. That's odd. Story 32. Also in senior school, a friend and I got bored, so we thought it would be funny to set up rules in our emails where an email from me would be forwarded back to me and an email from him forwarded back to him. A few million emails and a crashed server later, and the IT team put a lot of restrictions in our emails out of nowhere. Story 33. Got banned on FARC, short-term ban. Sent emails to a buddy who would quote me in his reply posts. FARC then made a rule that you couldn't quote users who were banned in the thread where they got banned. Story 34. There was a restaurant that had an all-you-can-eat dessert special. My friends and I got it reduced to 10 years and under from 13 years and under. Honestly, I'm surprised that the special lasted as long as it did. Everyone in the restaurant business knows you can't just offer teenagers all they can eat and expect to make money. Story 35. My office used to pick up big orders at Rubio's while wearing a Rubio's hat to take advantage of a 10% discount. I'm pretty sure we're why they dropped the discount. Story 36. Local Thai restaurants banned tips and made gratuities automatic because I would over-tip and waiters would fight to serve me.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.